Welcome back to the series of lectures on Western civilization, part one. I want to talk today about the Crusades. I guess the context here is an expanding Christianity. Significances, there are a few. The Crusades, of course, are going to create a lasting bitterness between Islam and Christianity, bitterness that we see extending all the way to today. It's also significant because, again, it's a chance for East and West to commingle. We see this with Alexander. We'll see it with the Romans and the Chinese. We'll see it in the future with the Mongols. This third significance may be the most important for us, and that is this. The Crusades remain relevant in Islam in the Arabic states. It's not relevant in the West. Most Westerners have not the slightest idea what the Crusades are, any details at all about it or its significances. The language of the Crusades, the actors in the Crusades are still very much alive in Islamic and Arabic culture, and I think this works to our disadvantage in this ongoing fight today with ISIS. Just 2 days ago, the airport in Istanbul was attacked by ISIS suicide bombers. And I'm going to get to this in our conclusions. I'm going to try to link the Crusades to the present day difficulties with Islam. So when we talk about the Crusades, of course, we're talking about the collision of the Christian Byzantine Empire centered at Constantinople and the powerful expansion of Islam out of the Arabian desert. Byzantium, remember, is the surviving eastern half of the Roman Empire, a Greek-speaking half. The western half of the Roman Empire has disintegrated into feudalism, which we've talked about, Latin-speaking western half, Greek-speaking eastern half. This is the eastern half, Byzantium. Orthodox Christianity here in the eastern half. Of course, in the western half, you have Roman Catholicism. The richest Christian city in the world is located there at Constantinople, Constantine's city. And of course, the Byzantine Empire's borders are clashing with Islam across North Africa and the Middle East. Byzantine geography, you can look at this on the map. You see the Balkan Peninsula, obviously, as part of Byzantium. Asia Minor, or what we call Turkey. Palestine, Syria, where many of the difficulties are occurring today. And then, of course, Northwest Africa and Egypt, and then running along the Mediterranean rim of North Africa. Just a bit here on Byzantine history. Some of this we've already talked about. From 330 of the Common Era, Constantinople, rather than Rome, was the center of Roman power and of Christianity. The Byzantines saw themselves as the true inheritors of Rome's imperial legacy. This is a Hellenistic culture. Remember the spread of Hellenistic culture with Alexander the Great. Now, in opposition to Byzantium, we have Islam. The emergence of Islam and its rapid expansion changed things pretty dramatically in the Mediterranean basin. For instance, the Mediterranean Sea is no longer a Roman lake. Byzantium still occupies part of the northern shore of the Mediterranean, but the southern shore of the Mediterranean is increasingly dominated by Muslims as Islam expands out of Arabia. And Islam, of course, has enormous political energy during these early centuries of expansion. Jihad, or holy war, drives the Arabs east, west, north. By 711 of the Common Era, Islam had crossed the Strait of Gibraltar, and it entered Christian Spain. By 732, Islam had penetrated France as well from Spain. The Islamic armies had defeated there in France at the Battle of Poitiers in 732. And then Islamic energy begins to wane a bit by the 11th century. Then Islam tends to be re-energized by an injection here of Asiatic Turks from Central Asia moving into these parts of the world, into what we think of as the Middle East and the Mediterranean basin. These Turks are converted to Islam, and the sort of warrior spirit re-energizes the faith. And then now we have this increasing clashes between Islam and Byzantine Christianity. How did the Crusades begin? Well, in 1094, the Byzantine Emperor Alexis calls on the Pope in Rome to send mercenaries or military contingents of some sort to help him fight off these Muslim Turks. Alexis specifically wants help for Jerusalem. He mentions Jerusalem specifically, I believe, knowing that it will have an emotional impact on these Western Christians in Rome and Western Europe. Now, in Rome, Pope Urban II, what's his motivation? Well, he's seeking a source of unity for an increasingly fragmented feudal Europe. You remember when we characterized feudalism, we talked about how it lacked a sort of central, overarching political authority. So Pope Urban II, I believe, thinks that the Crusades might be a way to unite these Christian noblemen of Western Europe in common cause. Of course, Pope Urban II seeks to expand his own power over the nobility of Western Europe, and by providing help to the Byzantine Emperor Alexis, Pope Urban II is going to gain some leverage over him. And indeed, if things work out as well as they possibly could, I suppose Pope Urban II might be able to reassert the Pope's authority over all of Christianity, including the Eastern Orthodox portion of it. How do we get past the prohibition against killing? Thou shalt not kill, of course, is one of the 10 Commandments. Christian pacifism is at stake here. All of you have heard the pacifistic nature of Jesus in the New Testament. How do we get past that? The Pope describes the need for moral gladiators to go to the Holy Lands and to reclaim the holy sites for Christianity. Are we to turn the other cheek, as Jesus suggested, or is it our duty to kill the infidel who has taken over Christianity's holy sites? Pope Urban II grants remission of sins for all the Christians who are willing to go to Palestine to kill Muslims. Muslims are described by the Pope as enemies of Christ. And then in November of 1095, Pope Urban II addresses the noblemen and the bishops at Clermont in France, and he makes these arguments that it's the Christian nobleman's duty to gather his knights and retainers together, go to the Holy Land, recover Jerusalem for Christianity, drive the Muslim infidel out. He urged Europe's armed nobility to, quote, hasten to exterminate this vile race from the lands of your Eastern brethren. He's asking for soldiers of Christ. Now, the First Crusade, the First and Third Crusades are the ones that are significant and the ones I want you to remember. In the First Crusade, 1098, the European nobles descend upon Palestine. They conquered Jerusalem in a bloodbath, killing man, woman, and child, Muslims who had lived there for centuries. The First Crusade is also significant because the Western Christians, the noblemen, established what are called Crusader states. And you can look at this on the map. You see there's a number of Crusader states created. For our purposes, the most important is the Kingdom of Jerusalem, which includes the city itself, but the surrounding territory. The Second Crusade, the Crusaders are defeated outside the walls of Damascus in what we call Syria today. This emboldens the Muslims to attempt to retake Jerusalem. And then the Third Crusade, also significant for a number of reasons. In 1175, Arabs under the Kurdish Arab general Saladin will begin a campaign to retake Jerusalem from the Crusaders, from the Christian Crusaders, and reclaim it for Islam. Saladin is important for us. He's very important to the Arabs even today. We in the West need to become acquainted with him. He remains the preeminent hero of the Arab world. Saladin is remembered for his humility and his compassion, for his restraint, and for his military successes. A very odd notion, but you see this in the sources. Some European nobles were doubtful of Saladin's Arabic identity, believing that those good qualities assigned to him indicated that he must be a Christian nobleman. He could not possibly be an Arab Muslim. Muslims, by definition, could not possess these positive qualities. This reminds me of the old argument that Frederick Douglass had to be a white man in blackface because an African American could not possibly be so effective an orator and so intelligent. Saladin defeats the Christians at the Battle of Hattin in 1187. The Crusader state of Jerusalem is recaptured by Saladin as a result of this victory. And then finally, the Fourth Crusade. This is not a crusade at all. This is basically a trade war between Venice and Constantinople. So-called Crusaders attack Constantinople, a fellow Christian city, in 1204, and it's lumped in with the Crusades. But like I said, the only ones I really want you to be familiar with are the first and third. The first, where the Christian noblemen are successful in establishing Crusader kingdoms, and the third, where Saladin and the Arabs retake Jerusalem and drive the Christians out. Remember that Byzantium will finally fall to the Muslims in 1453, thus ending once and for all the Christian domination of that part of the world. And of course, after the fall of Constantinople to the Islamic armies, the city's name will change again, now to Istanbul, which it remains to this day. I'm going to stop there, and we're going to do one more short lecture on the Crusades, discussing how we can link these events of 1,000 years ago to the events that are occurring today. Thank you.